Released in 2002 for the PlayStation 2, Rollercoaster World was part of D3 Publishers' Simple 2000 series, a line of budget titles aiming to bring low-cost entertainment to the masses. While the idea of a roller coaster construction and management game was appealing, especially to fans of titles like Theme Park World, Rollercoaster World did not quite meet the high expectations set by its competitors. With an underwhelming user interface, lackluster graphics, and limited gameplay, this game serves as a reminder of the limits that existed for certain titles during the early 2000s. Yet, there are moments of innovation buried beneath these shortcomings, particularly within its coaster design mechanics, which hold the game together as its one shining feature.
Rollercoaster World was developed by Bimbosoft and distributed by D3 Publisher. Being part of the Simple 2000 series, the game was marketed as a budget title. Released in Japan as Super Simple 2000 Series Volume 37, Rollercoaster World, and later in Europe under its English title, it promised to offer players the ability to create and manage their own theme parks, with a special focus on roller coaster design. However, the game faced steep competition from more polished theme park simulation games that had already gained a following.
By 2002, games like Theme Park World, released in 1999, and Rollercoaster Tycoon, released in 1999 on PC, had already set a high bar for theme park management simulators. Rollercoaster World tried to replicate their success, but ultimately fell short in several key areas, ranging from its graphics and user interface to the depth of gameplay. The game had potential, but it seemed hampered by technical limitations, likely stemming from the low-cost constraints of its Simple 2000 lineage.
Where Rollercoaster World does shine is in its roller coaster construction mechanics, which offer surprising depth and versatility. In fact, this is arguably the game's strongest feature. The design tools are detailed enough to allow players to create a wide variety of complex roller coaster tracks, offering a somewhat professional-grade feel to the construction experience. The game lets you adjust the height, speed, and even the curvature of the tracks, giving players full control over the physics and thrills of their coaster creations.
This design flexibility sets it apart from other titles of the time. While Theme Park World and similar games allowed for roller coaster building, the depth and customization offered by Rollercoaster World are far more advanced, enabling players to create more intricate rides. For coaster enthusiasts, this aspect of the game is truly where the fun lies, and it's clear that a significant portion of development effort went into making this mode as versatile as possible.
Yet, despite this, Rollercoaster World suffers from a lack of additional content to make the most of its design program. The rollercoaster creation tool feels professional, but it is bogged down by the simplicity and limitations of the rest of the game. While designing coasters is fun and involved, the management aspects of the game feel like an afterthought, providing very little engagement once your roller coasters are built.
Rollercoaster World clearly attempts to position itself as a competitor to titles like Theme Park World, but it fails to deliver an engaging management simulation. The management mode is bare bones, with limited options for park customization beyond roller coasters. While players can place other attractions, none of them are interactive, leaving them as mere passive revenue generators. This severely limits the sense of immersion, as managing your theme park feels more like an exercise in waiting for money to accumulate than in strategizing and optimizing.
Moreover, the user interface and management mode is downright ugly. Its design is clunky and lacks the polish that we expect, even from games in the early 2000s. The menus are difficult to navigate, and the general appearance feels outdated, even for its time. It's as if the developers spent so much time perfecting the roller coaster design tools that the management elements were neglected.
Another major flaw in the management mode is the overall lack of interactivity. Once you've placed a ride or attraction, there's little else to do with it. It generates income passively, with no need for upkeep, adjustments, or even staff management. This not only detracts from the game's sense of realism, but also makes the entire management mode feel incredibly shallow. Visually, Rollercoaster World does not hold up well, even by the standards of 2002. The graphics are simplistic, with many of the texture maps appearing heavily compressed. Attractions, shops, and roller coasters look blocky and lack the detail you'd expect from a PS2 game. The overall aesthetic feels cheap, which might have been acceptable had the gameplay compensated for it. But in this case, it doesn't.
Perhaps the most glaring issue is the odd appearance of the guests in your park. When roaming the park in first-person mode, you'll encounter static JPEG-like cutouts of people, whose faces are crudely pasted onto polygonal bodies. These poly-compressed images stand out like a sore thumb and leave you wondering, who are these people? And did the developers even get permission to use their photos? The overall look of the park guests is bizarre, and it feels like an afterthought rather than a well-executed feature.
Even with these graphical limitations, it's somewhat understandable given the constraints the developers were likely under. After all, memory had to be saved somewhere in order to make room for the intricate roller coaster mechanics. However, these savings in graphical fidelity still leave the game looking ugly and dated, even compared to other budget titles of the era.
Despite its shortcomings, Rollercoaster World does offer one mode that manages to make the most of its strengths. Challenge mode is where the game really comes to life, as players are tasked with designing roller coasters that meet specific criteria, such as completing the ride within a certain time limit or reaching a specified level of excitement. This mode strips away the less compelling management aspects of the game and focuses purely on what Rollercoaster World does best: rollercoaster design.
For those who love the challenge of balancing track speed, height, and safety, this mode offers a genuinely satisfying experience. The structured goals add a sense of purpose to the coaster building mechanics, which are otherwise underutilized in the standard management mode. Unfortunately, even this mode cannot carry the game on its own, and the overall lack of additional content makes Rollercoaster World feel limited in scope.
Another unusual feature of Rollercoaster World is its microphone support. The game allows players to use a USB microphone to interact with the park, though the functionality is rather limited. Players can shout commands at their park guests, which, while novel, adds very little to the overall experience. It's a quirky addition, but one that feels more like a gimmick than a meaningful feature. Given the game's many other shortcomings, it's hard to imagine that many players would find much value in using the microphone, especially since it doesn't enhance the core gameplay in any significant way.
In the end, Rollercoaster World is a game that had the potential to be something great, but it ultimately falls short due to its lack of polish and depth. While its rollercoaster design tools are surprisingly versatile and engaging, the rest of the game feels half-baked. The management mode is underwhelming, the graphics are subpar, and the overall experience feels limited. For die-hard rollercoaster enthusiasts, the coaster building mechanics might be enough to justify a playthrough, but for anyone seeking a well-rounded theme park simulator, there are far better options available. Rollercoaster World is a relic of its time, a budget title that aimed high but ultimately failed to deliver on its lofty ambitions.